Hi, welcome to my studio. My name's Kris. Are you struggling to learn watercolor? Let me suggest you start with a simple still life, like this pear. In this video, I'm going to show you my step-by-step process for painting in watercolor a simple still life. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to my studio. My name's Kris. In this video, I'm going to paint this picture of a pear. And I got this reference image off of unsplash.com. It's a copyright-free image. Anyone can feel free to use it. I was attracted to it, I think, because of the brightness of the green, yellowish green color. And I love that purpley gray background. And I just like the composition. So I'm going to go ahead and paint this, show you how I'm going to do it. I've already sketched it onto my 140-pound Arches cold press paper. And you can see that there. I've also tested out the colors that I'm planning to use. I've limited it to a palette of 4 colors. And I have those here. Let me go through them real quick. They are all Daniel Smith pigments, which is what I usually use. And I'm going to start with the green gold, Daniel Smith green gold, which really I think is a great choice for the pear itself, such a bright greenish gold color. Ultramarine blue and the quinacridone burnt orange. This is essentially my primary colors. Now they might not be your classic yellow, blue, and red, but they are, in a sense, a yellow, blue, and a red-ish color. And you really always want to strive to have a primary set of primary colors, like you see I have here, but it doesn't necessarily have to be your classic fire engine red, for example. This quinacridone burnt orange is a reddish tone, and so this is my triad here, okay? And I think it'll work great. I also chose a neutral. This is Moonglow, because I really when I looked at that background in the picture, I really saw Moonglow. It just really looked like right out of the tube almost. And Moonglow is gorgeous. It's granulating. It's got, once it dries, this isn't completely dry here, but when it dries, it really separates out into kind of some bluish, some violets, and it's gorgeous. Let me zoom in on these colors for a second. So here again, a little bit closer view. My ultramarine blue, green gold, quinacridone burnt orange, all Daniel Smith, plus Moonglow as a neutral. I went ahead and mixed these 3 colors up just to experiment with the mixtures I could get. Here's my ultramarine and Moonglow together, which I think I'll use some in the background, maybe in the shadow area. And then I also mixed up the green gold and quinacridone burnt orange, getting an even lighter orange. The nice thing about the quinacridone burnt orange, it can also serve well for that brown area at the top of the pear. And then lastly, I did a little sample mix of the ultramarine blue and the green gold, giving me some different variations of green, which I think will work great in this particular composition. So without any more chit-chat, let's just get right down to it and start painting this picture of a pear. So for this painting, I am going to use my Oku professional quill brushes, the largest of which is a 6, which will work great for the background and the big washes. I have a 4 and a 2 and a 1. These brushes, I have done another video showing these brushes, where you can learn a bit more about them if you're interested. They're great brushes. I also have, I might pull out a couple other smaller brushes when we get down to the details. We'll see. All right, let's get started. All right, I'm starting, I'm going to be painting wet on dry here. And I need to retain a little bit of highlight along the edge of that stem. So I don't want to paint just right over the stem. That's making it challenging there with this big brush. I'm using my number 6. Oku quill brush. I always try to use the largest brush possible, especially on a wash like this background where I really want to get a nice smooth large wash area. And so yes, while it is a little challenging with this big of a brush to do along the edge here, the advantage of having a big brush as far as the large wash area is really great. So, and again, you want to really don't mess around with it too much. Just put the color down and walk away. Kind of leave it, and see what you get there. Already you can see the colors separating here. Moonglow is just a really beautiful, gorgeous color. It's granulating. It's already settling into the texture of the paper. It's separating out into some of its different colors, pigments. It's gorgeous. Okay, I do want to not have a super hard edge there at the tabletop. So I'm gonna, with a wet brush with no pigment on it, I'm gonna come in and just touch right along there and set the brush down on its side, so to speak, so that it has the water that's in the belly of the brush will just pull, lay down a nice bit of water there along the edge, and it'll pull the pigment towards the water. Now the tabletop isn't completely white, even though it's pretty white compared to the rest of the painting. But since I'm in here, I think I'm gonna just keep going right on down. Now I'm still using the Moonglow. Put maybe just a bit of blue in it, and I'm just gonna go right around this whole thing here. And I'm not gonna have, but there's so little pigment in the brush that these areas down here will essentially play as white when I'm done, because there's just so little pigment there. A little bit there. And dropping into that shadow area. Some of the different colors that are in there. So some interesting reflections going on in that area. But they're very light, very translucent, so I don't want. I'm going to grab some more of my Moonglow, because this part of the shadow over here is quite a bit darker. The Moonglow is working great for that. Now I do see a little redness in this shadow, so I'm a little nervous to do it, but I'm going to take some of the quinacridone burnt orange, and I'm going to drop it into this Moonglow. I'm a little worried what the Moonglow would do with that quinacridone orange, worried that it might get muddy, but actually it's doing some interesting combination there that I like. So I'm gonna go with it here. The shadow is much darker here, right underneath the pear. So I'm gonna darken that up. Yeah, I like it. Okay, and you can see how these colors are just spreading up, because this whole area is wet, and I came in with these darker colors, and now they're just spreading right in to those areas. Lovely, and that's great. I am going to darken even more in here, I think. And I'm going slow at this because by waiting a little bit and letting some of the paint settle out into these areas, it's drying slowly and spreading less, responding less vigorously to the colors I'm placing in there, and that's good. Okay, I'm just looking into that reference image, and I just see this myriad, beautiful set of reflection of colors. Hopefully you have the reference image in front of you as well, so you can just kind of follow along, see what I'm doing there. Yeah, it's real pretty. I'm squinting at my reference image as well, seeing if I have my values right. Remember, values are really more important than color. And I have a really, really dark background in the upper left corner. It should probably be even darker than what I have right now. but I may come back and do that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and do the pear. Other than over on the far right side, actually, I think I'm just going to paint over everything, the entire pear, with pretty much a pure application of my green gold. And this color, or this edge here up against the background color, the moon glow, is pretty dry along there. It's still wet down along here in the shadow area, but I decided that that's okay, because letting this flow into that shadow area might actually really work well. I like that, so I think I'm gonna do that. Let that, see already what's happening here. It's kind of cool. Okay. I knew that would happen once I put that in there. Now, that's a pretty bright color. Immediately, I've got my core shadow in here, which is where the marking of where the dark and the light side of this pear kind of meet the shadow and the light side. And so I'm gonna, while this is all wet, I'm gonna come in and work this in here. There's also quite a bit of a highlight over here, which I just painted over. So I'm going to get a nice wet, or just damp, excuse me, a damp brush, not wet, and lift. Decided to do the paint over that area and then lift, as opposed to trying to just paint around it and end up with of lines. I didn't want to have hard lines there. Okay, now I'm going to take some of the nickel quinacridone, or quinacridone burnt orange, my orangish red color, and using my number 4, I think, Oku quill brush, I'm just dropping this color into the area near the top of the pear that is more of a brownish color. The entire painting is still wet. I have not yet let it dry completely. So it's not real wet, so the colors aren't spreading a lot, but they are spreading a little bit. Now also taking the ultramarine blue and starting to drop that into the center area. Again, this is called the core shadow. So right down the center of the pear, it is the area of deepest value, darkest value, the center or core of the shadow that makes up the shape of the object, the pear in this case. It's called the core shadow. And again, if you look at the reference picture here, you'll see that dark area that runs down the center. I'm trying to replicate that. Now in the original reference here, it's not a real strong blue color like I'm using, but I'm kind of boosting the hues a little bit just to make it interesting. Okay, now I'm taking the ultramarine blue and I've decided to go over that area of cast shadow below the pear, and I'm kind of covering up those blooms of color that were created earlier and really deepening, darkening that cast shadow, which I think this looks a little bit better now. Okay, now I've taken some of the quinacridone burnt orange, and I'm just wanting to intensify the color, the orange color and the brownish color near the top. So I'm just dropping some more of that in. Once again, the paper is still damp throughout the painting. It has not yet had a chance to dry completely. So when I do drop these colors in, they are spreading, as you can see there. There are dots and imperfections on the pear, and so I'm wanting to replicate that now, just dropping in some of the orange. All right, now I have allowed the painting to dry. There was a little bit of a gap in time there. I turned off the camera, let the paper dry completely, and now I'm back at it, and I've decided to darken the background. So I'm taking the Moon Glow, Daniel Smith Moon Glow, and carefully painting around the edge of the pear. I really felt I really felt like it would look better if I really darkened that background. So I'm doing that here, and using my number 6, I think, Oku brush, the largest of the quill brushes that I have, and painting carefully around the pear. Really super dark up in the upper right and upper left corners, so I'm using the thickest application of the pigment in those corners, and then I'm going to gradually lighten those colors as I move towards the center of the painting. So I'm putting in this pigment, and then I will come back with a brush that has less pigment in it, a little more water, and slowly, gradually lighten that value, as you can see I'm doing here. It can be tricky to come back and paint a background a second time. So I did wait until it dried completely before I came back to do that. If the paper is still a little wet and you try to paint over a background again, it can really mess it up. So now, because the paper is completely dry, I'm basically doing another glaze on top of the previous color and just darkening it, which is a little easier to do. I'm coming back in now again with the orange, quinacridone burnt orange, and I really want to emphasize some of these darker brown areas at the top. Again, my approach with this painting is to really boost the colors, to not be super realistic in my portrayal of the colors of the pear, but to boost them and make it look just a little brighter. And that you can do that without a problem. You can use unrealistic colors when you paint something, as long as you use the correct values. Value is really more important than the actual hue or color that you use. So by looking at my reference image, I'm really trying to carefully represent the relative lightness and darkness of the values throughout the pear, accurately representing those values so that I can represent the shape of this subject or this object. And again, so I'm really careful about the core shadow down the center, the cast shadow at the bottom, the level of darkness in the background. The darker the background is, the more the object will kind of pop up off the page. And so I'm really trying to focus more on value here than I am on accurate color representation. And again, I had dried the paper completely before I did the background. And so the pear is also dry. And so I'm essentially doing glazing now, a technique called glazing, where I'm painting wet on dry, and taking transparent, very wet wash of color, very light wash of color, and just coming in over areas I've already painted and just adding a bit more color. So here I've got a real light application of ultramarine blue with a little bit of green gold, so it's a bluish green, but it's very, very thin. The pigment is very light, and I'm just going over these areas on the lower right side to darken them a little bit and to add a little bit more color interest to them. I'm being very careful to maintain the highlight on the upper right side of the pear, since that is the lightest part of the pear, and I want to maintain that. As you remember earlier, I did paint a little bit of paint in that highlight area and then lifted it, creating a really nice soft edge in there. And now that I've got darker colors around it, it really looks very white. So color and lightness and darkness is always relative to the colors around it. And that's an important thing to keep in mind. Now I'm taking some more of the ultramarine blue, and then also in areas, now the nickel quinacridone gold, and I'm glazing over some of the other areas. I do see some reddish hue in the cast shadow, and so I wanted to capture that. So again, the only red that I'm using in this painting is my burnt orange. Again, that was my red value in my primary color triad. And you can see how when you place that orange in there next to the blue, it really does look orange, or really does look like it has a red tone to it. So that works well. Now I'm going to take some more of the Moon Glow, which is really the darkest color that I'm using. Real thick application of the Moon Glow, comes out almost black, and I'm painting along that left side of the stem. Really darken that. So this is, I'm pretty much getting near the end of this painting. I'm just looking now at details. And when you paint, you want to keep that in mind. You're always working from general to specific. You're always working with big shapes first, and then slowly, as you progress through the painting, you're working on smaller and smaller areas, smaller details, more specific aspects of the composition. But you start general and move towards specific. You start with large shapes, move towards small shapes. And that's really true in drawing as well as in painting. So now, again, being more specific, I've got some of that burnt orange, and I'm applying some spots around the pear. Again, if looking at the reference image here, you can see there's some imperfections in the pear, and I want to represent those as well. All right, the final details here. I really feel like we're getting close to being done. I want to add a little bit more of a dark value in the shadow area in the bottom of the pear. So I've got a mix of the ultramarine blue and Moon Glow. Produces a beautiful bluish gray. Again, also wanting to intensify that orangey brown area in the upper left. So I'm just putting down areas of that color. I'm going to leave some areas, some of this area with a hard edge, but I'm also going to come back and clean off my brush, put some water on it, and then soften some of these edges here in this area of orange hue. You can see here where I'm going to soften some of these edges, put down some, again, darker value, bluish green. Kind of zoomed in a little bit so you can see the detail a bit more. Again, it's something called lost and found edges, where sometimes you want to have hard edges between different areas of value, and other times you want to soften those. And so I'm going to kind of soften some of these areas now up in this area where the orange and brown is. So with my water on my brush, but no pigment, I'm just kind of lifting and scrubbing and lightening the area on the very top. Softening some of the edges there where the orange area hits the highlight area on the right. And now in this area, softening some of these hard edges along the edge of the orange hue. Well, I hope you found this to be a helpful tutorial. This is my finished painting here. I'm going to add my signature and call this a finished painting. If you enjoyed this, I'd encourage you to subscribe to my channel, hit the like button, and if you hit the notification bell, you'll be notified each time I publish a new video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.